Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. I see people are joining. It's really a pleasure to meet every Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern. It's now an appointment for all of us. Really, we look forward to this opportunity for dialogue with the ALS community. So thank you so much. I'm here with Dr. Merit Cudkowicz, the PI of the HEALEY ALS Platform Trial, as well as Catherine Small, our wonderful patient navigator. So welcome again. And I see, as always, some familiar names and new people joining, which is great. Please keep sharing the link for registration with your friends and other people so that more can join. Next slide. As always, please keep typing your questions in the chat box and we will take all your questions, because really the reason for being here every week is to take your questions. But before we get that, to that, let me just share a few quick updates. Next slides. So as you know, we're testing multiple treatments in this perpetual adaptive trial. Perpetual adaptive trial means that we will continue to grow and adapt and include more regimens. We launched the trial, as you may know, in July of 2020 with 3 drugs, regimens A, B, and C, that are listed on the slide and correspond to 3 different experimental drugs, zilucoplan, verdiperstat, and CNM-Au8. And we are actually literally starting any day now with regimen D, or predopidine, the new addition to the program. And so we have done all the background work to include this regimen, and now we're really waiting to enroll the very first participant in this new regimen. And the randomization ratio is 3:1 in every single regimen. So what that means is that for every regimen, people that participate in the trial will be randomized in a 3:1 ratio to either active drug or placebo. And what this means is that there's many more chances of being on active than placebo, because thanks to the platform infrastructure and model, we're able to share placebo participants, as you can see in the slide here. The participants from the placebo groups in each regimen are shared so that we can continue to test multiple treatments with this favorable randomization ratio. The placebo control period only lasts 6 months. And actually, if you can click one more time, as you know, we have been talking about the open label extension, which is really the opportunity for everyone who completes 6 months of placebo control trial to then go on active drug in a so-called open label extension. Every regimen of the platform trial offers the open label extension option. Again, this is optional, and we are excited that we're going to start, experiencing that open label extension option for the first few participants in January of 2021 for the first few regimens, A, B, and C. So essentially, we started enrollment for A, B, and C in July, and so that means that by January, we will have a few people transition to open label extension, at least for these first 3 regimens. And predopidine, as I said, is just activated now. So their open label extension will start in 6 months. Next slide. So we have selected 54 sites to be part of this trial. I'm glad to report that as of today, all 54 sites are IRB approved. So as you know, that's one step, the first step to really become part of the trial. The IRB is the Institutional Review Board, which is basically the ethics committee that reviews the plan and makes sure that all sites are have all the documents that are needed to be able to participate in the research. And so we have one IRB overseeing the entire study, and it approved all 54 sites. Now, that's only the first step towards being able to actually enroll participants, because there are some additional documents that need to be collected and some training and other procedures that need to be performed so that the sites can actually enroll participants. So as of right now, 33 are actively enrolling, meaning that they have completed all the steps, and we're working on activating the remaining sites. So I do want to mention that we are issuing a call for new sites, and I don't know, Merit, if you want to talk about that. We are particularly excited about this, so I don't know if you want to say a few words now about it.
Yes, sure. So we really heard from a lot of you and others that that you want to be part of the study, but there's not a site near you, or that the site near you is full or can't take more people. So we want to add more centers, particularly as we're anticipating or adding more drugs too. So we're going to do a call to the remaining centers in NEALS. So we have 137 centers in the Northeast ALS Consortium. And so about, less than half of them are involved now. So we're going to do another call. And then we'll pick from those sites. I think we'll add 10 or 15 more. I would love to hear from any of you or other, other patient advocates. If there isn't a center near you, if you want us to particularly look for a center, and we'll do more communication about that to patient groups. But our goal is to try to have centers near as many people as possible, but also we do it in a way that's manageable so that data quality continues to be really good. For example, if we went to all 137 centers, that might become actually kind of unmanageable. So we want to add 10 or 15, reassess, and then maybe add again after that.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. So for now, if you go on our website, you can see the list of all 54 that have been selected so far with all their contact information. So you can have a sense of which sites are participating. And then if you go to the next slide, you'll see the ones that are already actively enrolling. So that's, again, the list of the 33 sites that are actively enrolling. But once again, we're working on activating all 54 and adding more in 2021. Next slide. So as of today, we have had really fantastic enrollment rates despite COVID, which is really remarkable. We have over 200 people that have signed informed consent. 187 were assigned to a regimen. So for now, it's only regimens A, B, and C, but we're adding D very soon. And 164 are currently receiving study drug, which means either active or placebo, again in a 3-to-1 ratio. And every regimen is actually 160. So in a way, we are, we really are already basically enrolled enough people for one regimen, let's say, but they're obviously divided across 3 regimens, and that's great. So again, great progress, which means that we will know the results of the first few drugs, at roughly the same time, in the second half of 2021, which is really great progress if these enrollment rates continue. And going to the next slide, I do want to mention that we keep a close eye on the COVID situation, because really the timelines of all of these really depend on COVID in large part, in the sense that the sites are really excited to participate, and obviously there's great interest from the patient community. However, sites are working sort of under exceptional circumstances. Many centers are experiencing a second surge, as you know, as you've seen in the news, which means that there are some limitations to research activities. That's true at the site level. That's also true in terms of the overall coordination of the trial, and COVID has some very significant impact of obviously on health and hospitals, but also some secondary consequences on things that maybe one would not think about, such as the supply chain or some trial operations and research operations that are affected sort of at the industry level. So Merit, I don't know if you want to comment more on that and some of the things that we are doing. We are obviously being very proactive on all of this, and so far we're doing well, but that's something we wanted to share.
Yeah, I just say that there are supply chain problems for blood drawing supplies and urine collection supplies, so which is so important for the safety monitoring. And part of it is driven by the COVID vaccine trials, which have taken up a lot of supplies, and also, I mean, who knew we'd be worrying about boxes and plastic, but also the boxes and plastic to ship. So it's something we're actively managing, and but it does make things a little more difficult. We do have a home nursing company that we contracted with, but they're having a hard time because they don't have the supplies to go to patients' houses. So we're just sharing this in transparency, but we're doing our best to manage it. And the whole world is going through a lot of challenges, and but we are determined to keep the study going. And we think we did a lot to make it COVID proof, but there's still some challenges.
Great, thank you. If we can go to the next slide. And again, we have our wonderful patient navigator today. You met Catherine during previous webinars. Catherine and Allison are our patient navigation team. They're available by phone and email. And Catherine, would you want to introduce yourself or say a little bit about your interactions with the patient community over the last week?
Yeah, sure. So hi, everyone. So for those returning, nice to see you again. I'm Catherine Small. And for those who are new, being the patient navigator, I'd be the person behind the phone number and the email on the screen there. So if you have any questions about the trial itself, or if you have questions related to our participating sites, I would be the go-to person if you have any of those kind of general inquiries. So you can always feel free to call or send an email. Or if you have questions that you want to submit ahead of time for these webinars, you can email me those as well.
Excellent, thank you. And then the last slide we have for today before we move on to your questions. Once again, this is the weekly webinar series. The idea for the series came from our patient advisory committee, and I had to say that's one of my favorite features of the trial. We really love to be out there and being available. And these are recorded, so you can also find the recordings, the slides available on our website. You can download the slides and you can find the schedule and registration links there. We just submitted some additional slides to be able to give webinars about each drug's mechanism of action and science. And we're very excited. We will have a number of guest speakers on this weekly series, including the scientists that are working on developing the drugs. So that would be a great opportunity for everyone to ask questions. If you have any questions about any of the drugs, please join those webinars. We're working on scheduling those webinars, so please check the website. I would say maybe first week of January or so, we should have entire series planned out. We're basically coordinating with all the scientists to make sure that they're available. It's gonna be one drug per week, so that we have enough time to really go deeper into the science and all the knowledge that we have about each drug. So thank you for that, and now I think we can take time for questions.
Yeah, and please type in your questions, please, on the Q&A. I'll say that those webinars with about each regimen, they're going to be a little longer. They'll be an hour, so we have time for the to really go over the science and answer your questions. And I believe, I hope we'll be starting probably about the third week of January, so they're coming up soon. So I saw one question which was about when we scheduled them. So so we should start in January, probably third week. There's another question. Will you be in talks with coming to Canada? So we have started discussions about coming to Canada. Those discussions have started first with patients, then with the physicians, and then if the physicians also agree that they would like to be part of this, we're going to start the process to go to Health Canada, which is authority, which is their FDA equivalent. I do think, just for complete transparency, that adding Canadian sites is not going to happen for a little bit, because it won't be for these first 4 regimens, for example, because we do need to talk to Health Canada, and then we'd have to, change language for a lot of the documents and find vendors in Canada. It's not a small thing, even though it's just above the border. It's actually a big deal to add sites in another country. So we're thinking about them really for the future regimens, but we want to do it. But right now we're waiting to hear back from the Canadian ALS investigators about whether there's 5 or more sites that would like to be part of this. Hopefully we'll hear soon. Okay, so let me go through some of the questions here. Let's see. So I completed a form at MGH and at Upstate. What happens next? I'm a patient at MGH and University of Rochester. Sabrina, do you want to answer that maybe?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you. So, so essentially, when different sites manage their enrollment sort of locally, I can say for MGH, since you mentioned that we have people complete a questionnaire. So thank you for completing that. That allows us the opportunity to review your records and get a general sense of whether you might be eligible for the trial. We have a team that reviews all of these, what we call patient interest forms. And so they will contact, all participants. I know they are in the process of contacting everyone. We had very robust interest, very robust interest with almost 200 people that have expressed interest at our site. So I know, Catherine, actually you're part of that team. They're working through that, one by one, to make sure that they can email and especially call people on the phone. So I know that, we're going, through that process. So perhaps you may want to send an email to Catherine tomorrow to check on that and whether they've reviewed your record specifically.
We have some really good questions here. One is, I just wanted to check whether it's okay for a trial participant to get the COVID vaccine without fear that it would spoil the trial results. And Sabrina, I know you're looking into that, so maybe
yes. So as far as we know at this time, yes, there's no problem with the COVID vaccine.
Yeah. How long will open label drug be available to participants once their 24-week double-blind trial ends?
Great question. It depends on the regimen a little bit. So we have some sort of predefined lengths of study. So for the ones that are up and running right now, it's at least 12 months. Now, I would say that because we are really accelerating the pace of testing, the good news is that by the time, as people are on the open label extension, we will know the results, the final results of the trial at some point at that time. So if the trial is positive, we will do everything possible to keep the patients who are on open label extension even for longer, longer than the planned year or so. And if the trial is negative, then, there will be no point in continuing that and people could be switched to something else. So I think a nice strategy here of the entire infrastructure is to be able to, again, allow several months of open access treatment to everyone who completes the placebo trial. But then, at some point, we will know the final results. So hopefully we can continue, hopefully we'll have positive results and that open label extension can be extended.
Yeah. There's a question about vital capacity testing at the master screening, as it's required to be above 50%. If because of pandemic, you need to do it different ways, can you explain that? What are the options? Yeah,
no, that's a great question. So essentially, as you know, all those criteria are available on our website through a link, and so they are a little bit technical, but essentially from a patient perspective, what this means that we have a couple of different ways of assessing respiratory function, which is also known as vital capacity. When we planned the trial, we were going to use just one method, which is the standard method called slow vital capacity using a certain device. But because of the pandemic and because some hospitals are now not allowing individual clinics to use respiratory devices in the clinic because of the concern about spreading the virus potentially, so that they kind of restricted that activity, we allowed alternative ways of testing the same thing, basically by using either the actual hospital pulmonary function lab, or by using home devices, depending on the site. So again, this is just to give different options of measuring the same type of respiratory function parameter, just because of the pandemic. That's one of the ways we made the protocol COVID friendly, so to speak.
Yeah, and I think that all these approaches are going to help even after we're out of this pandemic. So I think it took a lot of brainstorming and actually some international calls to figure this out with all our colleagues, because it affects all ALS trials. So I think we found a good solution. So there's a question, and maybe I'll answer this one. Would I have a better chance to get into the platform if I just completed interest forms throughout the country, or just sites close to home? So my answer to that would be close to home, but also to reach out to Catherine, because if you're having a hard time getting, if let's say that center isn't where you get your usual care, and you might be having a hard time getting an answer, we can call that site for you and find out the status and try to facilitate those connections, for sure. If I have lower motor neuron disease and not upper, will I still qualify? Rita, do you want to answer that one?
Yeah, so it depends a little bit. So if at this point the disease is purely lower motor neuron, there were some upper motor neuron signs previously, that could still be a possibility. But if there's never been any upper motor neuron signs ever, that would not be a possibility, because it's a little bit of a sort of a separate disease in a way. It's called PMA, and basically it's a lower motor neuron, pure lower motor neuron form of the disease, and those are typically not eligible for trials.
And that's largely because the course can be very different, and we still, one of the areas of research really is whether the biology is different. So that kind of leads to the next question, which is about the compassionate release. Is the study eligible for compassionate release, and is compassionate release the same topic as expanded access? And maybe I'll answer that one.
Yeah.
So expanded access and compassionate use are the same thing. And as you've heard on these calls, we really listened to our patient advisory group, who asked if we could add in or create a HEALEY expanded access program for the platform trial, and we are doing that. Now, it's not going to be big enough to have an access for everybody who's not eligible, but at least it's definitely a good start. And so we'll be launching those in 2021 at a few of the centers. And we are going to make it like a requirement going forward for anyone working with the platform trial, not only to provide open label extension, but also an expanded access option. And so that would be for people who are not eligible for the HEALEY platform trial. Someone asked if we can have a recording of the webinar, and absolutely, that's posted shortly after this on our website, on the HEALEY Center website. So how might the passage of Senate Bill 4867, House Resolution 8662, which provide $100 million for 5 years for a total of $500 million, help the platform trial? Sabrina, do you want to answer first? I'm happy to weigh in.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Oh, I think they're going to help ALS research, not just the platform trial. If they, if it, goes into full inaction, some of it is to really provide more resources to the FDA to accelerate what they do, and that helps everybody, including the platform trial. Some of it is to provide more expanded access funds, and that will help us as well as other groups. So I think it's all a good thing. Any updates on actively recruiting sites in Minnesota, waiting on Mayo Clinic and the University of Minnesota sites? Sabrina, do you want to answer that?
Yeah, I know those are the two sites in Minnesota. I don't know if, Catherine, you have more updated information about those sites exactly, because I know you track that, but essentially they're all central IRB approved. So all of them have been approved to participate, but we're working on activation steps. So I don't have an exact timeline, but if you want to call Catherine tomorrow, she can check on that. Unless you know right now, Catherine, I'm not sure if you can remember exactly.
I actually got that exact question from somebody else. So you're not alone. There are other people kind of waiting on those two sites in Minnesota. And right now we kind of look at site activation on a spectrum of 4 checkboxes. And the one that's most helpful in terms of giving you an estimate is their site initiation visit. And for those two sites, I'm not sure what the date is. So there isn't a set date for that initiation visit, but once we have that date, I'll be able to give you a clear estimate of when they might be up and running. So
yeah. We can try to give that answer on our next weekly call. But the good news is that they have their ethics approval, they have their contracts. So now the SIV is really our training of the sites. And it's really important because we want all our sites to be really compliant with the protocol, because the worst thing you can do is not have that, because it's unsafe. And also if we have a positive results and sites don't follow the protocol, then it means those data are invalidated. So we do spend a fair amount of time really training, and this is pretty complex. It's like starting 3 or 4 studies at once for a site. But the good news is they're in the, they're scheduling the site initiation visit. So I'm hoping in January that those, at least one, if not both of them, will be activated. But we'll try to get a more precise answer for next time. How many patients will enroll in each site, and will they take into account if I'm only 80 miles away?
Yeah, basically there's no set number per site, and so the good news is that as the trial is perpetual, we'll continue to enroll, so we will continue to add more treatments, and so the number of spots available will continue to be refreshed and continue to have spots available. So per site, each site will have to make the determination of how many people they can enroll, have in the study at any given time. That really depends on local resources. As Dr. Cudkowicz was mentioning, we want the sites to be able to do the trial in a way that's obviously safe for everyone, for all participants, but also being able to follow the protocol, which is fairly complex, so that we can really provide the high quality data that the FDA would require for approval of new drugs. Yes, 80 miles doesn't seem to be obviously the distance, but obviously, please discuss, with the investigator. But yes, we take people from sort of a reasonable distance. Yeah.
Will you have a trial for drug reldesemtiv? So the reldesemtiv is a drug by company Cytokinetics, and they are going to be doing a trial in ALS. They've done other trials in ALS, but they're not going to do it through the platform trial. They have, which is fine also. I don't have any details yet. I don't think they've set a start date for that at this point. There's a question, actually, thank you for the weekly update. Someone who says, I'm an MGH ALS patient, but I'm about to get accepted for the platform trial at UMass. Are we still enrolling? And would it be possible to switch as I only live 3 miles from MGH?
That's a great question. I mean, in Massachusetts, we have a couple of sites, and then another one that will be activated hopefully very soon in the city. So we are trying to sort of collaborate, and sort of share, our respective availability, so that we can make sure that we can give access to as many people as possible. Again, it's we're still enrolling, but we might have a bigger list, I guess, at MGH. So it's great that you can have that availability at UMass.
Yeah. So good. Last, maybe, I don't know if it'll be the last or second last question. Do you have any recommendations for patients who want to encourage / push their academic site to be added to the platform trial, particularly if they are needed geographically for patients from an active site? And yeah, I think that's a great question. First, we're very inclusionary. We've always believed in that. That's why we set up Neil's. So when we did the first call, 57 sites applied. And so of the 137, we picked 54. And the only 3 sites we didn't pick were sites that had never done a trial ever. And we just thought that this might be too complex to be the very first trial they did, but we did try to connect those 3 sites with other trials or other studies so that they could get that experience. So that means a lot of our sites didn't apply. And some of it's because, people get bombarded by emails and they missed all the announcement about it. And we do have a list of about 25 sites that are fit in that category. And other ones did it because they didn't want to be part of it. And I do think that patients can advocate for it and, say how important it is and that there's patient interest, and, encourage them to talk to Sabrina or myself. I mean, we all know it, and maybe they just need to understand a little bit more about it to get them excited about it. There's a question about, can you explain if my SOD1 panel is positive, would I still qualify?
Yes, absolutely. So the trial drugs are expected to have an impact on all forms of ALS if they are positive. Again, they're not restricted to any specific group. Having said that, obviously there are very exciting trials separate from the platform trial that are specifically targeting people with familial ALS, such as people that have SOD1 mutations. So those will be also another great fit, will be kind of separate from the trial. So again, it's, I think the SOD1 targeted trials are also very exciting and could be considered for somebody who has that gene mutation. However, again, the platform could be another good fit.
And then the last question, actually, there's 2 questions. Maybe I'll answer one and I'll give you one to Sabrina. Just to follow up on the SOD1, if you could briefly explain the SOD1 gene. It sounds like no one will be excluded if they meet the criteria. Is that accurate?
Yes, people that have a positive SOD1 gene mutation can be included in the platform trial. Yes.
Yes, absolutely. And then this is hypothetical. If someone's enrolled in, let's say, regimen A, and ended up being the placebo group, are they only eligible for open label extension for regimen A, or can they go to another regimen that might have already had positive results? So if someone's, let's say, in regimen A and you're finished with the 24 weeks, you can go into the open label for A and only for A. And that's the reason is because we learn so much more about the drug in that open label. So it's great to provide it, but it's also really important for getting that drug to market. And I think Sabrina's talks on Amylyx and showing that how much was learned from the AMX035 double-blind part and the open label and how important that's going to be, really stress how important that data is as well. Also, at the end of the double-blind period, before someone goes into open label, we're not able to tell you whether you were on drug or placebo because we can't do that until the study's actually completely over for everybody. So we wouldn't be able to switch someone. But let's say one of the drugs works and it becomes, part of standard of care, then everybody could go on it. And then again, that's the beauty of the platform trial. We can adapt that way. So I hope that made sense, but maybe we can take one of our future webinars and talk a little bit more about that. I think it's a really good question, especially now that we're going into open label extension. So I know we're out of time, but I do want to get to our last two questions, which are, can you speak more about the timing and plans for expanded access and who's going to be eligible? Sabrina, do you want to take that?
Yes, so the expanded access program that we're working on setting up is going to be a series of small EAPs for people who are not eligible for the trial. So essentially, this is a sort of a parallel path for people that do not meet criteria for the trial so that they can get access to the investigational product while we're testing it in the trial. And again, obviously at the end, when we'll know if it works or not, that the open label extension or the EAP will be continued depending on the results. But again, it's a parallel track for people who are not eligible for the trial. And our goal is to start setting this up in early 2021. So we don't have an exact timeline because obviously that depends also on getting all the regulatory approvals from the IRB as well as the FDA.
Okay. Thank you. The last question is whether the drugs are going to stop progression, slow progression, or cure. And I'll say we don't know because we don't know. We know the science behind all these drugs is great. That's why they were picked, but they've not been tested in people with ALS. So we don't know whether they're going to work and or not, and we don't know how much, if they do work, how much. But obviously, we picked drugs that we thought had good science and good rationale, and could be given safely at the right dose. So we'll be a lot smarter when the studies these initial studies are over. Thank you everybody for joining again. I don't know if we're coming next week. I know it's holiday week. No. Okay.
Yeah, I was gonna say we have a short break, but we will be back. I believe the next one is January 7th, and by that time we will have more information about the other webinars about the science of each drug. So see you in early January.
Yeah, happy holidays, everybody. Stay safe.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.